Nick Barley had gone to Montreal to meet with various poets, and he'd seen some of the Innu performers, Josephine Bacon and Natasha Canapé-Fontaine, performing, and being like, okay, we have to bring this to Edinburgh. As a result of that, I ended up in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, for a festival in May called Les Nuits Amérindiens, with a sort of delegation of about 30 Quebecois First Nation writers and Montreal poets and academics and performers to meet with Josephine, Natasha and Naomi. And to sort of bring back how we could work and collaborate and bring that experience back to Edinburgh. And now we're in Edinburgh in August, so it's going on, and we'll be presenting on the stage with the 3 Innu women writers, and then hopefully in May going to Montreal as well for yet another stage of the exchange. So yeah. It's lovely. It's a lovely extended programme. It was quite strange in a way, because there's so much of this project has been about, you know, being from the north and the tundra and sort of similar latitudes, and then we're all in Haiti in sort of Caribbean latitudes, and in a pool under a jasmine tree at midnight making friends. So, but it was interesting in a way, because for me, nearly everybody else was francophone. So my French is okay. It's getting better, but it was an experience for me to be, in a way, the outsider. To be the non-dominant sort of, you know, cultural force for once there. And actually, you know, if you're Anglophone, you don't get to be in that experience quite often, because obviously it's Creole and then Quebecois and French. So that was fascinating. And also just to see sort of the performance style and see what was different, but also what chimed in terms of performance. I did some performing out there in English and with a French translation from Jonathan Lamy as well. And there was a lovely sort of moment of going, okay, conversationally I'm kind of keeping up, but actually when we perform, we see the connections and from the poetry there, and that was very powerful. I hadn't really experienced that before, so yeah.
Nick had chosen some different poets, wanted poets, female poets, to represent Scotland, and it's quite interesting because actually, while all 3 of us have made Scotland our home, none of us are actually born in Scotland. And at first that seemed a bit funny, but then I think as time has gone on, I've really come to see it as a wonderful coincidence, because actually the Innu people are a people whose homeland and way of living has really been taken away from them. So very much their modern existence and life, as far as I'm coming to understand, is about finding ways to make a new home and build a new way of living. And in a way there's a connection, I think, for us in that it was chosen for us rather than put upon us, but we are all writers who have found a new homeland and had to make a new home for ourselves as well. And in fact, the more I've thought about it, and it's been very lovely, Anna probably will be able to talk about this as well, but getting to know these poets first actually through their writing and then getting to meet them yesterday. But it's been really affecting me, coming to understand that I think for writers, language and the way we hold language and sculpt language is a way of making a home, and it is a kind of way of loving and feeling and being, and I think that's very apparent both in their work and in the work of the poets and writers that I know here.
Yes, this has been a very, very different way of working, because normally I meet the poets whom I translate, and then I get to work on translating them. But this time I met their work before I met them, and I think to echo what Jennifer said, it's quite clear that for Natasha, whose work I've been working on, collaborating with, for her, the language is very, very important. The Innu-aimun language erupts from time to time in her poems. Her poems are in French, but the Innu words erupt. It's as though suddenly there is no other way of saying what she has to say, and this Innu word comes up. And I found that very moving. Her syntax is very interesting. It's very kind of disjointed and broken up, and it really felt to me like the language of someone who is in exile and who has snapshots of memory from her conversations with her grandmother and her mother, and the mother-grandmother line is clearly a very important one. And so her memories are very much the memories of someone who has lost a homeland and is clinging on. But there's also a real tension in her work. She's looking forward, she's young, and there's a real spark and zest about her writing, which I found very, very appealing. And there's, she's clearly trying to find a way of living in the modern world while remaining faithful to her Innu roots and traditions. And she uses a lot of this symbolic imagery of the canoe, the drum, the moccasins, and all the stuff that goes with hunting the caribou, all the leather, the tanning, and all the complicated stuff. And it's very, very interesting, actually, just from a practical point of view, to hear all that in her poetry. So it's been a huge pleasure translating it. Plus, it somehow chimed with something else Jennifer and Rachel were saying about coming to live here. For me, it was a choice, and the idea of north, because I was born in the far west of England. I was born in Plymouth, and my ancestors came from Cornwall and from Ireland, but I've always seemed to want to go further north, and so this theme of the north as a kind of, I suppose like magnetic north, it has a magnetism about it, and it appeals very much to me and what I want to write about. So it's been a great pleasure translating her and responding to her poem.
For me, yes, because I think so I'm from Northern Ireland, and I left when I was 18, and there was very much a sort of impetus just to leave. It was like, this isn't where you're going to build your life. So there's an idea of a loyalty to a tribe or a place or a clan, and this idea of rebuilding it, I think, through things like language, but also quite practically through things like childbirth, and actually how you maintain those traditions. With an interesting contrast, the book that particularly chimed for me was Naomi Fontaine's Cuisipan, which is the novel, because there's this idea of the nomad life. The Innu are a nomad people, so there's a seasonal movement. But actually, how does that play with having children and freedom and personal freedom and a modern life? And that chimed for me nearly in opposite ways, in that I left my place in the north and I don't have children, and I've never necessarily felt that obligation, or certainly not up until now, to have that, to be part of the clan, and that idea of loyalty. So actually it's raised a lot of questions for me in that, but also seeing that it's not as simple as being, here is a people and it will remain, enclosed to the thing. There is this interaction with the modern world, with individual modern life, and the wish for that, and how does that interplay work. So it's actually impacted a heck of a lot for me in the last few months in terms of what I've been thinking about for my own work as well.
And I've been responding to this beautiful collection of Josephine Bacon's poems, and something I've been so struck by, and it's been very powerful for me, is how Josephine is the oldest of the poets. She's lived a life, especially early on, that I think was very full of struggle and suffering, a lot to do with many of the problematic political and still ongoing issues surrounding the tribal relationship with the dominant political powers in Canada. But what was so moving to me about her poems is that I don't get any sense of anger or retribution or vengefulness in the poems. And I think actually in a way she would be quite justified to fill the poems with that kind of emotion. However, they're so generous and compassionate. And actually we learned last night, Josephine performed a poem for us last night, and it was so moving because the end of the poem, she read it first in Innu as something Innu, and then she read the translation, and it turned out the translation was I am human. And we realized that the translation of Innu is actually human. And we were so moved by this idea that the name of this people is all people. And I think this seems to really come across in their feeling and thinking that even though they've suffered, we're all part of a continuum, a human continuum, and it's bigger than our individual lives. And I just find that's really opened up for me in my writing. I've been struggling a lot with being moved by wanting to write about things I think are difficult or problematic in the world, but not wanting to be the kind of poet who, wags fingers at people.
No polemic.
This has opened up a possibility for me of ways that you can move people and touch people and be honest, but not have to be burdened by your need to talk about problematic situations.
Well, I was very interested in finding out a little, even through the poetry, of the Innu writers, and I write poetry myself, and I was also very interested to see, or to hear, the original sound, and also to understand a little of what they were saying through the translations. And I've been really lucky because I've had, now what's her name again? Josephine's book signed by her. So I was very touched. The highlight for me was listening to Josephine reading her poems, and she also read some in English, and one of the British poets also read some of her translations, and they were so moving. And I really loved the way she felt and conveyed her connection to the land. And it also made me think about what awful things we're doing to the land at the moment, and hoping we can do something about it. I knew a little bit about Innu people from what I'd seen in documentaries or films or something like that, you know. So I felt I learned more about the emotions of the people there, because poetry is so good at conveying emotion. Well, I've never before been to an event where foreign poets read in their own language and we got the translation, and I thought that was really, really interesting. And I think it's important that we connect with other people in the world. We are just one world, and learn a bit more about how they feel as well as how we feel.
Well, my grandmother was Inuit, and so my grandfather worked for the Hudson's Bay Company for a long time, and mostly in Labrador. So it has some resonance for us. Always interested to find out. I remember a lot of the stories and some of the things my grandfather used to talk about. He was 40 years up there, and worked very closely with the Cree and with Inuit people there in the trading posts, mostly around Fort Chimo, Cartwright, around that area there. So I was interested to see what was being said here. Only once I visited colleagues of my grandfather's in Toronto, but I haven't actually ventured up into the North Country yet. It's something I would hope to do with my cousins as well. It was very enjoyable, yes. I don't speak French, unfortunately, and I don't speak any of the Inuit languages. But yes, it was enjoyable. Some of the imagery. And it was quite moving. I think my sister's here with me, and she's quite almost kind of overwhelmed with it, because it does bring back a lot of memories. My grandfather died obviously a long time ago, and we have various scraps of memories and things. So it means a lot to us, actually. You know? Yes, it was very good. So I enjoyed it. Yes, it was. I think you did as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
I don't have any memories of any of it, so it's nice to kind of be here and hear the language and hear the stories of my dad and my Aunt Tricia. So.
Oh, I think it's very important. I mean, I imagine it's very difficult. I mean, translating poetry must be one of the most difficult things in any language to get the meaning and the sense over. So, full marks to them for trying it, and I think there should be a lot more of this. So I certainly found it very, very stimulating.
What did I think? I loved it. It's exactly what I was hoping for. I wanted a taste of the Inuit North, and I got that in spades. So I'm feeling really excited. I feel like I've been on holiday. Yeah, I am particularly interested in this area of the world. I'm a bit worried that this sounds like a plug, but it's because I'm researching my own novel, which is set in the borderlands of Montana and Canada, and then up into the Yukon. So I'm trying to get a feel for the place from all perspectives as much as I possibly can, because I don't want to do the cultural imperialism thing, so I want from the horse's mouth. So yeah, I found myself going there on holiday, and then my research took me there just by a completely different route, but I love it. I love that part of the world. I love the openness. I love the fact that nature's still quite wild and dangerous, despite our best attempts, and I do love the fact that the people there still seem to have an affinity for the natural world, and that's what I'm looking for. So yeah. the authenticity and the simplicity of the native writers, and realising that my French A-level still stuck, which was nice. I was like, I'm understanding this and I like to be able to hear the poetry in their original languages, even if I'm not getting it all. I mean, hearing the reading in Innu was quite magical, because you get the rhythms and in a way that you don't in translation. So the book festival is just an amazing resource, and this kind of event in particular, because I wouldn't even be able to get these books. I wouldn't know these books existed if it wasn't for this kind of event. And the fact that it's all here in our city and people are wandering around and happy to chat, and it just gives it a vibrancy and a feeling that it's all there for all of us because it's accessible, which is just really nice. So yeah, love the book festival.